Yeah, we might as well. I think there might be a few more that kind of pop on and everything, but go ahead and get started. We don't want to take up any of your time here.
Okay, all right, we will get started. Good morning, everyone. It is so good to have you today on the fourth session of our emotional intelligence series. And today we're going to be talking about decision making. I'm really excited to be with you. I'm Jahnavi Brenner, and I am zooming in from Boulder, Colorado, just from the corner of my house. And I'm excited to kind of share this content with you today. We've got about an hour and a half scheduled, and we're going to be talking about emotional intelligence and decision making. So as we get started, feel free to drop a note in the chat box and tell us where you're from. It's kind of fun to see where everyone's calling in from. And feel free to turn your camera on, and don't worry what you look like. Don't worry who's with you. All that's totally fine. So welcome, welcome. Just a few logistics. As typical, your audio is muted so that we can all hear the speakers, but you're welcome to join us via Zoom features. So we're going to do a couple polls today, and we have the chat box open. So feel free to dive in if you have a question or have an observation or have something to share about something I am saying. Drop it in there. This is such a fabulous community of people who are coming together who are interested in emotional intelligence. And so I don't claim to have all the answers on it, and I know that this community has some wonderful resources to share. So don't be shy to drop those into the box. Your experience, any links you want to share, just throw it in there. It's all good, and it's all welcome from me. If you need any help, contact someone who's called a panelist or a host, or just throw it in the chat box. Honestly, everyone in the group tends to crowdsource and help each other, so that's kind of fun. So I'll share with you a little bit about me for those of you who I haven't met yet. My name again is Jahnavi Brenner, and I'm based in Boulder, Colorado. I'm a certified leadership coach, and I also do some consulting in the HR space on talent and culture. So if it has to do with developing people, or if it has to do with the environment that everyone's working in, totally my sweet spot, and it is my jam, and I love it, and I eat it up. I've spent about 25 years in corporate environments working in R&D. I have an engineering undergrad, and then I moved into sales, and then I moved into HR roles. So kind of been around the block a little bit, trying to find my passion, I guess you could call it, and I really have found it. I am so excited to create workplaces where leaders lead with confidence and ease, and all employees want to give their best work. And the company name that I have for my company is called The Vivid Leader. And so, I encourage you to meet up with me on LinkedIn. I haven't gotten a newsletter going yet, but I do share articles and posts on LinkedIn on things that I'm interested in leadership and culture and talent. And if that's of interest to you, I welcome you to come join me over there, and we'll share my LinkedIn handle and email address and stuff like that later in the chat, but it's not that hard to find me. All right, so let's dive in. Here's our agenda today. First, we're going to talk a little bit about why emotional intelligence matters in decision making. And then we'll cover a couple techniques to increase our EI skills. One of them we'll just kind of do as a group. And then the second one, it would be awesome if we had a volunteer. So I'm going to plant that seed now. If you've got a decision that you're grappling with and you might want to work with me on that in this wonderful group to demonstrate a new technique, I encourage you to be ready to raise your hand later when we have that opportunity. And then I'll cover a few things about just how to take your learning further. All right, we're going to start with a poll. So my question for you is to just reflect on a typical day at work. And how often during a normal work day do you make a decision that either impacts your project, the thing you're working on, your relationships at work, or your own well-being? Is it once a day? Is it 2 to 4 times a day? Is it 5 to 6 times a day? Is it 7 or more times a day? And if you don't have access to the poll, feel free to drop your answer in the chat. That's pretty cool. We're not going to get you tabulated, but I'll get to see what your answer is to this poll. So just reflect on that normal workday. Joanne's dropping her answer in there. Thank you. Jack's got an answer, and I'm not seeing kind of the rate of responses, Ashley, so I'll leave it to you to tell me when you got most and close and share.
We're almost there. Everybody get their last ones in. We're slowing down here.
Cool. Coral, I love that. Working at home with kids learning at home, it feels like it's 25 plus.
Oh, yeah.
We've got another person saying 7+, and Ariella is also saying 7+ times a day. Awesome, great. Yeah, wow. So it looks like, as you guys can see these results up here, most of you are saying it's 7 or more times a day, 36% of you. And then if we add up the top 2 responses, which is 5 to 6 times a day, which is 35% of people, and 7 or more times a day, which is 36% of people, we get about 71% saying it's happening 5 or more times a day. So it's happening a lot, right? So it makes sense. This is something that happens to us frequently. We're making a decision that's pretty important because it affects our output, our product, our people around us, or ourselves. So this is why I think it's critically important to look at emotional intelligence and decision making, because it happens frequently. And then if you look at the literature about decision making, you'll see that it's something that's well studied and well researched. Knowing how to make a good decision, like what to say in a sticky personal situation, or determining how to invest your money, could be the key to living your best life, right? And being able to make those decisions in a timely manner and feeling confident about your skills could save you some energy and maybe even some hassle. From an organizational perspective, there are decisions that are made, on who's in the organization, right? Who's doing what job, and how they're evaluated in that job, and what success looks like in that job. And all of those decisions for organizations impact the financial performance of the organization, and then consequently the long-term viability of that organization. So it's pretty important. I did a quick search in Harvard Business Review, which is a publication, kind of for corporations. It has a lot of great leadership research published there. And I just searched on decision quality, and I got over 20,000 results. So it's well studied. I just found this blog post on 40 books you could read to improve your ability to make decisions. And when we look at what is published on decision making, there's models and processes. People are really focused right now on mitigating bias, right? And then how do you make decisions in teams? And then knowledge analytics is coming into decision making. And then artificial intelligence, because there's this intersection now between automation and humans that's happening as we try to kind of do more with the resources we have, and we realize that there's some places where we can automate. So all of these aspects are quite important and well published. Today we're going to dive into one that might be lesser published, but it's really, really important, and it's that intersection of emotional intelligence and decision making. So just to ground ourselves, emotional intelligence has been a long, long history, right? Going back to Darwin. And through the years, researchers identified that EI skills may be essential to life. Daniel Goleman brought this to the forefront in the business community with his book, Emotional Intelligence, in 1995. And he argued that EI, emotional intelligence, could be more important than IQ. It can account to 25 to almost 50% of our on-the-job success when we're in professional jobs. And the reason is because work happens at the intersection of humans, right? So, if you could create your total output to your end customer all by yourself, that would be great. But usually we do a little bit, we hand it off to someone else, they do a little bit, they hand it off to someone else, and someone else does a little bit. And you can even think about that in an education system, like, one of the colleges that you're a part of, right? There's admissions, there's counseling, there's all the faculty, there's the other staff, there's the on-site staff. When we are meeting in person, everyone plays a role and everyone does something to deliver that experience to your students. So let's get grounded on what emotional intelligence is and how it kind of intersects with what we're talking about today. It's a set of social and emotional skills that enable us to do 4 things. We're able to perceive and express ourselves. We're able to develop and maintain social relationships. We can cope with challenges. And then today our focus is going to be about using emotional information in an effective and meaningful way. Yesterday, I was working with an engineer, it's like a software engineer. He's a team leader. He's a client of mine. And we were talking about emotional intelligence because we were debriefing his EQI results. And this is the framework for the emotional intelligence model and EQI. And I shared with him that, EI, emotional intelligence, or even just emotions, are data. And, as an engineer, a software engineer, you write a little piece of code and then you run it through the test loop, and If it works, great. If it doesn't work, whatever it spits out is data. And if you're trying to write good code, you would never ignore that data. You would use that data to help you make your code better. And so we talked about that, and he was like, oh, wow, that kind of really light bulbed for him in terms of kind of realizing that emotions are data, and they're not just squishy things that you can ignore and shove in the closet and you shouldn't bring to work and all that other stuff. It is just as important as words people say, as pictures people put on the wall, as posters that you might encounter, right? Words, emotions, all of these things are data in our workplace, and it's so important to kind of bring them all in as we try to connect and relate to other people, and then also to make decisions. So today, our focus, as I mentioned, is on decision making, and which is represented here in this green segment of the circle. And today we're going to talk about reality testing and impulse control. So that's our focus for today. So some of you may be really familiar with this cycle of our thoughts, our feelings, emotions, and our actions. And I kind of added 2 parts today at the top, the outcome and the stimulus. And if this rings true for you, just drop a message in the chat. This is like such a foundational foundational kind of aspect of I guess human behavior. So what typically happens is we have a stimulus in our life, and then we have a thought about that stimulus, and then we have a feeling or emotion, a physical feeling or maybe an emotion, and then out of that comes an action, our action, and then we have an outcome that's based on our action. Decision making is happening in the action section of this diagram. In order to have effective and high quality decisions, we want to ensure that we're kind of considering all the thoughts and considering all the feelings so that we can make a well-informed decision. And that one thought or one emotion that might be kind of racing for us and kind of coming to the surface really strongly isn't hijacking us and kind of running the show. So as I mentioned, I spend a lot of time with my clients on this, and we talk about the intellectual response we have to stimuluses, and we have emotional response to stimulus, right? So we're often unaware of our thoughts and emotions because they're happening instinctively for us. But raising our emotional intelligence will enable us to become aware, and then we can respond to our thoughts and feelings with deliberate action instead of reacting with impulsive action. So it's kind of choosing a response versus reacting kind of instinctively. And often as a coach, I ask my clients about their thoughts and emotions to encourage them to look closely. Sometimes they have thoughts that might be considered assumptions, that might be considered limiting beliefs. And then I just challenge those and ask them, like, how true is that really? When you really come down to it, how true is that one experience for you, or is it how much of a capital T truth is it for the universe? And then we also look at how those thoughts are shaping their emotions, and then the impact those emotions are having on their actions. So I'll share a brief example for you just to kind of bring this home. Let's say you're presenting your work to a team of people at work, right? So you're on a virtual meeting, and hopefully you have this experience. If some of you can drop that in the chat, that you've ever presented work to colleagues or maybe some higher ups in your organization. Picture yourself in that situation, and you're presenting your part in the meeting, and some senior leader who's on the call, maybe your department manager or department manager's manager, just asking a lot of questions, about your part. And you're presenting, you got like 6 slides, and you're going, and now all the questions come in. How many of you have had that experience? If that's familiar, just drop a message in the chat for me. Yes, okay, great, awesome. I see some resources being shared in the chat. This is good, yay, cool, okay. So you've had that, great, so you can relate, put yourself in that situation. So when that senior leader starts asking some questions, what are some thoughts that you could be having in that moment about what's happening? The stimulus is the senior leader. In the chat, throw out some of your thoughts. Jenny's mentioning panic. Okay, maybe she's feeling scared. What's the thought associated with panic? I will get to it. Let me finish is April's thought. Some fear is coming up. Maybe doubt is coming up. Depends on the tone, Jim said, right? And maybe my history with the questionnaire, exactly. Rachel is saying, did I vet this thoroughly? Michelle is saying, please don't ask me anything I don't know. Jan is saying she needs to leave and go for a walk. Yeah. Lori's saying, hey, wait, they're engaged. They're excited about my content. This is kind of cool. Depends, right? So there's all different thoughts. And you guys saw this, the gamut, right? The, wow, they're engaged. They're excited about my work, to, oh my God, don't ask me anything about this because now I'm really scared and I'm doubting myself completely. When we have those kinds of thoughts that are kind of more on the negative side, maybe it's, uh-oh, I didn't do enough, or I didn't do the right work. And then maybe the feelings that come up could be scared, or feeling like I'm inferior to the senior leader or some other people. Yeah. And then what kind of actions do we take? What do we do when we are in a presentation and we start to feel a little scared or unsure? What happens? What are our actions? If you could drop that in the chat, how might that be impacting your actions? What would your actions be? Filler words, I tend to add detail. I'll start talking faster. Exactly, yeah. We might even stop talking. We might start mumbling. We might rush through it. Exactly. I might shut down. I might blush, right? I might have a physical reaction. Exactly. So again, this is where, and then when we stop talking, we mumble and we rush, our outcome is that people don't know the work that we did. People aren't engaged and informed on what we have produced here for the organization. So really, we think about those actions, they don't lead to great outcomes. So with my clients, we talk a lot about, well, what's a new thought I could have? And so what if we take the other side of the spectrum, which is, I think Lori had dropped that in the chat. Wow, this leader is actually interested in this stuff. This is kind of cool. This is awesome. Then how do we feel, right? We feel, wow, I'm excited. This is pretty exciting. I'm working on the right work in this organization. I'm feeling valued. I'm feeling proud that my project is getting this kind of attention. I'm feeling supported. And then how we might show up, you guys can drop that in the chat, but I just put in a couple thoughts. I'm going to be bold. I'm going to go share some new ideas and be like, well, I just had this brainstorm. Let me tell you about this thought I had about this project. Or maybe I might say, hey, leader, I need a couple extra people to come join me on this work, or I need to pay for this outside effort because I want to kind of take this a little bit further. Yeah. And Sophia says, I would feel motivated to do more. Like, how amazing is that, right? So not only with a different thought, we've changed kind of our whole effectiveness in the presentation, changed our effectiveness in how we want to show up at work, which is super powerful. So I love this cycle. And when we start to examine this deeper, we realize our thoughts are a choice. Our emotions are a choice. And then we realize how we can shift it and get different outcomes. So hopefully that's powerful and meaningful for you. And Ashley already dropped this in the chat, which is so amazing. But again, the feelings wheel. If you don't have a browser open with the feelings wheel, or don't have a hard copy pulled out, please do that right now while I'm talking about it. The website's on the bottom of the slide, because we're going to need this for the next exercise. So this is a feelings wheel, and what it does is it depicts emotions or feelings, starting in the center with the most descriptive, most simple emotions. Sorry, the center has the most simple emotions: sad, fearful, angry, happy, surprised, bad, disgusted. And as we go to the outer edge, we get more descriptive and we get more kind of discrete about the emotion. So I kind of think about this when I ask my 9-year-old, how are you feeling? She always picks a word in the middle. And then you ask like an adult who's really maybe in tune with their feelings, does a lot of emotion work, and they'll always pick something on the outer edge. And to increase our emotional literacy, we want to start using the words on the outer edge, because the outer edge is where we can get really specific about what's happening and for us, and then we can get specific about solving it and fixing it. So, or addressing it. Doesn't always have to fix it. So as an example, I'm feeling a bit sad. It's January, and I have a sister who lives in Michigan, and I usually see her about 3 or 4 times a year. She's 4 years older than me. We like to go shopping together and just get our nails done, maybe do a workout together, like sisterly stuff. It's not anything amazing, but and I'm a visitor in like Metro Detroit. It's not a hotspot destination, but it's a place. And I haven't seen her in about 6 months, and I don't really know when we're going to get together because we're kind of lower on the list of vaccinations and the whole COVID thing, right? So it's useful to know that I'm sad, but if I sit with that feeling a little bit longer, and I'm like, really, like, what else am I feeling? Like, it's more than sad, and I could look at this list and kind of go, well, really, really, how am I feeling? And I finally identify, gosh, I'm feeling isolated. I'm feeling disconnected from her, right? And so what I would do to help myself when I'm feeling sad is probably get a little exercise, maybe eat some chocolate, maybe take a nap, maybe watch something funny on Netflix, right? But what I want to do when I identify that I'm feeling isolated is very different. It is to increase my connection with my sister. So now I'm texting her, like 3 or 4 times a day on the phone. We're FaceTiming instead of just talking. I'm checking in with her more frequently so I can kind of decrease that feeling of isolation. So I just want to check in with you. Does that help kind of drive home the point of getting to the outer ring of the circle? I'm seeing Laura nodding. Thank you for that. I appreciate that kind of visual feedback. But I'd love in the chat, for those of you who aren't on camera, just kind of let me know, is that resonating with you and the value here? Cool. Thank you, Sophia. Yes, April. Awesome. Good. And I bring this back. We've looked at this feelings wheel a couple times, and I offer it to you. If you haven't printed it out yet, darn it, now is the time, girl or guy. Now is the time, because our feelings are actually quite complex right now. I think a lot of us felt like we were turning a corner when we moved to 2021 and everything was going to be different. And some things are different and some things are not different. And the better we get at describing our own feelings, even just to ourselves, the better we can support ourselves emotionally. And then if you're in the position to support other people, maybe you're a people leader, maybe you're a team member, maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a child, maybe you're a spouse, maybe you're a partner. All of those roles put you in a friend, put you in a position to be able to support someone. And to be able to support someone and help them understand how they are feeling right now about whatever's happening and help them get to the outer ring of this circle can really, really help them figure out what to do about it. Great. Jim, I see your question in here about not connecting the complexity on the outer edge with the emotion in the center. Do you want to come on off mute and we can talk a little bit? I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're comfortable, jump on.
No problem. Hi. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, I mean, I'm just looking at, when I look at some of the emotions on the outer edge, I don't immediately connect them with that particular emotion in the middle. And I'm trying to think of a good example, but so where was it? Oh gosh. So withdrawn, for example, doesn't associate with anger for me. I get that it's negative, but it's not, I just wouldn't put it, I don't know, personally, I just wouldn't put it there on the wheel. And that's not true of all of these, obviously, but that's what I sometimes struggle with on the outer edge is as you move out, I think what I'm really saying is there aren't just 7 basic feelings. There are some that are just distinct, and maybe as you get to the outer edge, there are more than 6 or 7 sectors, and they just don't categorize well. I don't know.
Yeah, so there are many different versions of the feeling wheel. So that's one thing to think about. This is one version of it. I always tell people to go find one with the most words, because if we don't have the language and the words inside ourselves, sometimes when we see a prompt on a piece of paper, it can help us identify what's happening. Yeah, and it's okay if you don't see the connection between anger and withdrawn. That's okay, and just the idea is to kind of get deeper into kind of what that emotion is. And as we dive into the next exercise, we'll talk about identifying the emotion plus the reason you're feeling that emotion, because that might be a little bit more useful. So thank you. I appreciate you jumping in and sharing that. I'm sure other people are agreeing with you. So it's great to normalize that feeling of, I'm kind of confused by the feeling wheel, which is totally cool and totally okay, right? And if any of you are experts on this space, some of you are professors, for crying out loud, probably in the space. So jump in the chat and help us all out with your brilliance. to kind of make this a little more accessible for all of us. So, okay, everyone's got a copy of the feelings wheel open, right? Because you will need it. I promise you, you will need it. So get that copy open and let's dive in. We're going to talk first about impulse control. So impulse control is a skill under decision making in the EQI model that I work with. And impulse control is defined as the ability to delay an impulse, a drive, a temptation to act, and it involves avoiding rash behavior and rash decision making. There are, of course, positive outcomes to acting on our impulses. So let's talk a little bit about that first, right? So we don't think all impulses are horrible. Let's say you're on a walk in your neighborhood and it's a snowy day like it is for many of us today, and you see a bicyclist down in the middle of the road, looks hurt. You know, your impulse is going to be to stop your leisure walk, right? And go check and see if that person needs help. If it's a busy street, your impulse might be to, you know, kind of secure the area and maybe move this person or set up some barriers or get some other people to help you to prevent this person from getting injured further. And depending on the severity of the situation, you might have an impulse to pull out your cell phone and call 911. That's awesome, right? Those are great impulses because they're helping us. And what's happening is we're not really thinking, what should I do here? It's just our gut and our impulse kind of telling us exactly what to do and to take action. And that's fabulous. There, on the other hand, there's some negative outcomes of acting on our impulses. And this could be impulse shopping. It could be impulse eating. It could be reacting right away in a conversation with a partner, or a coworker, or a peer. It could be responding to a post on social media or even something we see in the news. So in order to minimize the potential negative outcome of acting on our impulse, we're going to do an exercise that's called putting on the brakes. Just really simple, okay? So this exercise about putting on the brakes is really to help us clear our sensory system when we start to feel an impulse. So we're going to practice this together, and you're going to be amazed at how crazy simple it is, yet a little bit complex as we get into the meat of the sandwich here. So first, I want you to kind of think about a situation that you're dealing with right now where you're starting to feel a little impulsive about. It might be those cookies in the kitchen. Sometimes it's the Oreos for me. But it might be like firing off some email response to someone, or maybe it's like a quick reaction in a conversation with a partner or a child or a family member. Really put yourself in that situation. I invite you to just close your eyes and picture yourself in that place and think about the people around you, maybe the physical space that you're in when you're kind of immersing yourself in this decision-making space. And jot down a few words on a piece of paper about this situation now. You might have to open your eyes to jot that down, but just to kind of ground yourself, jot down, you know, for me, honestly, it's probably dealing with my child. That's the place where I get really impulsive. So, you know, my daughter has done something that has just irritated me, and that is my situation. I'm going to drop that down. So step one in putting the brakes on, it's called taking your emotional pulse. Okay, so this step gives you the space and time to understand what is motivating your behavior. And that motivation is an emotion, okay? And you want to understand what's motivating your behavior in the first place so that you can control it, right? So sometimes we have a basic instinct that's controlling our behavior. Breathing, swallowing, blinking, maybe crying out in pain when we're surprised, our instincts. And those are actually, you know, just kind of instinctual. Our body just does it. Other times they're learned behaviors, and they're connected to specific thoughts and feelings. But they're so well learned. They are learned. I promise you, they're learned behaviors. They seem to be instinctual, but we have to know that they are learned behaviors. So let's take your emotional pulse right now of the situation that you were just imagining. Write down the sentence, I feel blank because blank, and use that feeling. Use a feeling from the feelings wheel and try to get far out to the edges of the feelings wheel. And if it's in the wrong segment of the feelings wheel, don't stress out about that at all. It's okay. But try to pick a really descriptive word. And if you feel comfortable, drop in your sentence in the chat. And if you have more than one feeling, that's totally cool too, because sometimes we have multiple feelings about a situation. You know, write down those sentences. Rachel has written down that she's feeling agitated. And so also capture, I think she threw that in there before, but as you write down your sentence, capture what you feel and why. I feel cheated. Why? I feel angry. Why? I feel frustrated. Why? And if someone's got one, feel free to drop it in the chat so we can all learn from it. I feel skeptical because I've heard this 100 times before. Janie, I hope you're not talking about me, but that's cool too. So, yeah, that totally makes sense, right? You feel skeptical because you've been here, you've heard it. Yeah, I feel overwhelmed because of time constraints. Yes, I feel disappointed because my point was taken personally. Thank you. These are wonderful. Do you see how descriptive these are? Because now, you know, these wonderful authors can start thinking about, well, gosh, I feel irritated because I think I'm judged. And now the question is, are you really being judged? How true is that? Is that really happening? You know, you can kind of get deeper about it, and you're taking a breath. You're slowing down to combine your emotional reaction with the thought you're having and put it in front of yourself. Awesome. Really, really great. Okay, so we're taking our pulse. Now we're going to move on to step 2. It's so simple. You're going to think I'm crazy. But the second step in this process is to take a really deep breath. It is really deep breathing. Okay, crazy simple because you all do breathing every day, I think, like more than 7 times a day, I think. But the purpose of this super duper deep breath is to disrupt the physiological momentum that builds up and leads to an impulsive release. Okay, so we're going to do this together, but there's like 6 steps to a deep breath. So I told you it gets really complicated in the middle here. All right, so the first step is to take a breath of air in through your nose. So take a deep breath. And like, honestly, if you're on mute, so be loud here, okay? Deep breath in the nose. And then exhale through your mouth, open mouth exhale. And let it all out. Exhale as long as you possibly can. And then push gently on your diaphragm, like in the middle of your body, to get all that air out. Just push on yourself a little bit and get that air out. And then when you must inhale again, do it through your nose again. And I encourage people to do this 2 or 3 times to slow yourself down. And I love those of you that are on camera because I see you doing it. Yes. I see it. Yes. So together, we're envisioning ourselves in that situation where we're going to be impulsive, and we start taking some super duper complex deep breaths. And I love this comment from Jenny. A deep breath is an answer to a lot of things. God, I need that tattooed to my hand here. I totally need that tattooed to my hand. It is brilliant. Okay, so we're repeating that a few times. We are disrupting physiological momentum from our emotional response. We're disrupting that. And then after our deep breath and after we've disrupted ourselves from reacting, we ask ourselves one question. What is the very best possible outcome that could occur in this situation, that could happen in this situation? So now that you've disrupted yourself from your situation, write that down for yourself. What is the best possible outcome? I don't care if you don't think it's possible, right? You know, well, you have to think it's possible, but like the very best scenario. Like I don't want you to limit yourself here. What is the very, very best possible outcome? And we're asking ourselves this question to get us thinking cognitively again, right? To get us to access all of our brilliance because we've interrupted the emotional response. We're now going to go back to thinking. And it takes our attention off that emotional circuitry and helps us focus on an optimal rational outcome. And from there, we can then make an informed decision of how to proceed. So how many of you now have, when you think about that best outcome, how many of you now have some new ideas about how to proceed in this situation? And if you do, just drop that in the chat for me. Oh, Jamie, thanks. I was feeling the situation that happened. Okay, cool. You weren't referring to me. No worries, great. Linda, you had a great sentence, feeling appalled because you don't accept the situation. Thank you for sharing. Nisi's saying she really likes the idea of envisioning the best possible outcome. Good. Why did that resonating with you, Nisi? Do you mind coming off mute and just sharing with us?
I think a lot of times when I find myself kind of getting trapped in the negative reaction, it's hard to get out of that kind of thought spiral. And so just being able to remind myself that, as you said, like it might not necessarily end up with the best possible outcome, but trying to envision it, I think sometimes gets you back on track to moving towards it. And for me, sometimes I just need the steps. Like I do a lot of the deep breathing. I think that's sort of a reflex, but sometimes that's kind of where I am at the end, is like, okay, I've breathed deeply, now what? And so I like the idea that the next step is to imagine what could come out of it.
Yeah, great, thank you. And when I think about the situations, honestly, a lot of it's parenting for me, where I have kind of these challenges and I'm reacting and I'm like firing off stuff to my 9-year-old, and she's like, "You're the worst mom ever," and I'm like, "I'm a really good mom. You could be living on the street." Like you can think of the drama that comes out of my mouth. In the moment, like if I think, what is the best possible outcome? It's she feels loved and we get the thing done that I want her to do. And I'm calmer, right? It's all three of those. And I'm like, okay, how do I go forward now? I stop yelling. I tell her, gosh, I care about you so much, and that's why I want you to do this thing. It's for your health, it's for your safety, whatever it is. And I want this to be easy for us, and then I get her to kind of participate. So great. I'm seeing some stuff in the chat here. This is so great. I love these comments. So I'm going to read some of these for those of you who might not have access. So Ariella is saying she's feeling more open-minded to work through the situation for the best outcome and the greater good. Rachel, feeling unattached to the belief of my parents. I'm able to be independent from my parents' ideas. That's a really big one. April, not taking it personally. I can only control myself. Let it go, and move on. Jamie, taking time to stop and breathe, lowers our heart rate, respiratory rate, and gives our brain a chance to reprocess. So well said. Thank you, Jamie. Laura wants to share how she feels gently, be understood, and be part of changing the situation. Wow, how powerful, right? Because maybe I'm hypothesizing, Laura, but maybe had you let your emotional response kind of just come out, it wouldn't have come out gently. It would have come out with a lot of force. And now you're like, I've got calmness with me. I can share this with you in a non-aggressive way, but in an assertive way, which is really powerful. Wonderful. Heather, thank you for laughing with me about that one. Matthew had some acceptance in his. I took a chance and I have no issue with it. My point was valid. Wonderful. Okay, great. Good. So I told you this was super simple. There's 3 steps. Okay. Take your emotional pulse. Take a deep, super duper deep breath. And then ask yourself, what is the best possible outcome I could get? If this were Christmas morning and I was the best kid ever, what's the thing I'm unwrapping, right? What's the thing under the tree that I'm unwrapping? So really simple. This technique is from a book I referenced down there on that slide. Notice that it doesn't call for you to ignore your emotions, because we try to do that. We try to stuff our emotions or ignore them and not address them. This technique calls you to write it down. Say it out loud, write it down. I feel X because of Y. And if we don't acknowledge our emotion, it's really, really hard for us to clear it. And so it's really important to kind of get it out, clear it, and then take that deep breath and then move on to the logical part of our brain. Cool. All right. Hopefully that was valuable to you. We're moving on to our next technique. Our next exercise is going to help us with reality testing, which is another important skill in decision making. And reality testing is the ability to see things objectively, to see things as they really are, and to understand if we have bias or emotions that are in play. And our bias isn't always our emotions. It could be kind of a way we operate kind of bias that come into play sometimes when we're making decisions. So this exercise is about using all three of our brains, all three of our minds. And some of you probably are familiar, but we have three different brains that can be working for us at a given time. Three brains that could be working for you at a given time, and they're all inside your beautiful bodies, right? Three brains. We call them the head, the heart, and the gut, okay? So the head is our logical brain. We use it to sort out and make logic and sense making. We kind of call it reasoning. This is kind of where we would create and build our detailed future plans with like all the milestones and the critical path and all that wonderful logic. Our heart is our emotions. It often has visuals and like just feelings and sensations in it. And it, you know, like, it's kind of like the, I don't know what it is, but I'll feel it kind of thing, you know, when people kind of talk about that, right? And it's typically where our dreams are kind of held and our goals and kind of in that little kind of fuzzy, beautiful, full of light kind of view. And then our gut is our instinct. It is our intuition. It is our unself-conscious. It guides us to immediately react. It's usually very practical and direct. And you think about, you know, that scenario I told you when you were out on a walk and you saw the biker down, right? That's your gut moving to action. That's not your heart going, oh, let me care for this person. It's just like my gut, my instinct is telling me there's danger, solve it, fix it, and you know, make this other person safe. We all have a natural preference to how we make decisions. And I'm seeing some comments in the chat where someone's saying, I'm going to my logic, my head more often. We all have a natural preference to how we make decisions. And depending on the decision, we may just rely on one of our brains to guide us. Sometimes maybe in relationship situations, we'll rely on our heart if there's a relationship involved. And when we're moving maybe to uncertain territory, we might over-rely on our gut. And the consequence of relying on one instead of all three is that we don't get the brilliance of all of our wonderful brains, right? So we want to leverage all that brilliance, especially when we're making decisions that impact ourselves, our products, our outputs, and our relationships, right? So today we're going to do an exercise that does just that. And so I would like to see if we have a volunteer who wants to come off mute and kind of work with me a little bit for a little demo. So you're going to bring in kind of a decision you're working on, and we're going to help you access all three of your minds. And I'm going to demo this. So if you're interested, feel free to write a message in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand in the participant box. Got 129 people on the line today. That's awesome. All right, Matt, you're in. Matthew is in. Yeah. Okay, so let's bring Matthew up if we can. Ashley, so I can see him. Maybe we can spotlight his video. And Matthew, you want to come off mute for us? I see you. Thank you. Cool. You ready?
Sure.
Okay, cool. So first, Matthew, before you start, everyone, we are making a safe space for Matthew, right? We're going to support Matthew. Our intent here is for him to help us demonstrate this technique and to all learn from the experience. And usually we all learn. So what happens here in this room stays in this room. If you happen to know Matthew outside of this
Container.
forum. Thank you. Container. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop the share, Matthew. So I think Ashley has spotlighted our video. So hopefully we're both showing up for people. So tell me a little bit about your decision that you're facing.
It's engaging a sibling who seems judgmental and closed-minded about the situation.
Okay, so you've got a sibling that you want to engage, and what does engagement mean?
Have an open discussion about something she took offense to.
Okay, so the situation that happened, she possibly got offended, and you want to talk about it.
Yeah, she got defensive and offended. Yeah.
Okay. So what is your head telling you? Like when you think about what to do here, what is your head telling you to do?
don't go there because it's fruitless. It has been my the history of it, of anything of this nature, is yeah, it's anytime try to engage this, it's not gonna turn out for the best.
Okay. So there's kind of a thought there about, I've been here before.
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's going to be much different.
No.
Okay. What other thoughts are you having about it?
Disappointment, sadness.
Yeah. And those are emotions that are probably connected to that thought of, gosh, I'm not going to get a different outcome.
Right.
Does that sound right? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right. And then when you think about approaching her, there's some thought you're having about, I used her, I'm sorry. Are you thinking about approaching the sibling?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I just caught that or I made that up, but what thought are you having that's kind of having you lean in right now?
That if I do engage, it's going to cause more space. It's going to push away more than it already is.
Okay. But there's something kind of working at you that's saying you want to engage.
I'm trying to be aware of not making myself right. I don't want to be right in this situation. I just want to be I guess I want my point to be kind of validated or recognized instead of dismissed and as a what was described as a rude and disappointing action.
Okay. Okay. So I'm hearing a couple thoughts that you want to be heard and not dismissed. You're also having this other thought that's kind of telling you this is kind of futile. Is that accurate? Okay.
Correct.
All right. And then when you think about, well, you're not going to think, when you're feeling in your heart, what kind of feelings are you having about this decision? How are you feeling?
Anxious, sadness, and fear.
Yeah, there's some uncertainty for sure, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And some possibility it could turn out the way it has in the past, or that the situation might get worse. How do you want this other person to feel?
I want them to feel heard as well. I want them to feel gratitude. And connection.
Is it fair to say you want to feel some connection as well?
Yes.
Yeah, so you want both parties to feel some connection. Okay. And then what's your gut telling you about this?
My gut says I can't change what I have no control over.
What else, if anything?
That's about it. That's the key thing I can hone in on.
Okay. What do you not have control over in this situation?
Oh, the other person's emotions.
Anything else?
I guess anybody else's reaction I don't have,
Mm.
I don't have control over what that person says about me or discusses with other folks when this is a private matter.
Yeah. What can you control?
My what I do,
Uh-huh.
how I react or respond.
Right. Okay. And in what you do, does that include kind of what you say, what you choose to say, what you choose not to say?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So now I'm going to kind of share back with you some of the things I captured, and hopefully I've got some of this that might be useful to you. But if you were to integrate kind of all three of your brains here, so your head is kind of saying you want to be heard, and you're feeling that it might be futile. And that if you approach, it might also push her away.
Right.
And your heart's kind of guiding you to say, I want to feel connection with her. I want her to feel connection with me. And I want that other person also to feel heard and to have some gratitude. And your gut saying, I can control what I do and how I respond, but I know I can't control the rest of the other person and maybe some other people that are involved in this and how they react. So if you were to integrate all of that, what's coming to you about this situation?
I think I my point should have I'm shooting myself to death. Uh, could have been made more clear, and less abrupt, in order for my view to be interpreted correctly the way I wanted it to be.
How would you phrase that in a
And-
next time sort of way? Sorry.
And my experience says it would still be read the same way. Knowing the defensive behavior that my sibling exhibits.
Okay.
So,
So you're,
and I would have been more clear in what I was trying to express. I wouldn't have any vague feeling or guilty feeling of what I expressed. I would be more clear in what I expressed, and more solid with that. Even if her reaction was the same.
Okay. So I'm hearing there's an opportunity for you to have framed it differently.
Yeah.
Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yeah.
So if you were to take that opportunity and apply it to the decision you have in front of you to approach this person or not approach this person, what are you thinking about that? Or what's coming up for you there?
I think it's having some ownership in the situation. I know what I brought to the table in this problem, and that gives me a little more empathy for her reaction. But I'm also not diminishing my feelings on that I was trying to point across. I still have validation for my own feelings, but that's the word that's been in question here, using the word but. And I also recognize that I didn't express my view with clarity. So my ownership in that is clear.
So it sounds like you've got a new view on the situation that's happened already.
Yeah.
And how, as you go forward in this relationship, is this opportunity going to come up again? Is this informing how you might proceed in the future? I don't know if that's a possibility at all.
Yeah, I think it is brought to light that I do need to breathe before I make a point. I also have some fear because I am going to have to interact with her this evening via Zoom through another event for another sibling. I have some fear there, and I also have some apprehension because I'm predicting behavior of my other sibling. So
yeah,
I'm expecting certain behavior.
So how is that shaping you? It seems like it's creating some emotions. You've got a thought about how she might behave, but creating some emotion that's going to create some action for you in that call.
Yep. And that reaction and that behavior, I'm not confident that she can suppress that behavior in this situation, social situation with family. I'm expecting passive aggressive behavior. That's my fear right now.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense if you're expecting that to be scared, right?
Yeah. And I think I have an idea of how to mitigate that. So
what's coming up for you at that idea?
Clarifying something that might help her understand the point I was trying to make.
Okay. Is there anything else we should look at, Matthew, on this?
No, we'd be here for hours.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you being willing and sharing this situation with us. It sounds like it's a complex one. You're getting some love in the chat here. Other people have been here, so thank you very much, Matthew. But just wanted to kind of illustrate kind of stepping through, right? The head, the heart, and the gut. A couple things that I did with Matthew was to kind of reframe from I don't want this to I do want that, and then to kind of expand our thinking beyond ourselves about what are we thinking to also what's the other person thinking or feeling, and how do we bring that into our consciousness so that we can make the best decision about the situation. It's amazing, this thought, emotion, action cycle is live here, right? You can all see that happening about what's the thought, what's the emotion, and what's the action. And so, if we had more time, it might be interesting to see if there's another thought that we could have about this person, right? Is there another thought we could have about this person that could help us get to a different outcome? But, another time, another day, and maybe Matthew will take that away this afternoon. So,
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. So just to kind of put it all together for you on one slide, which I'm not presenting anymore. So let me share my screen. Great. So my heart is telling me something. My head is telling me something. My heart is guiding me to something. And my gut let me know, right? So those are the three pieces that we're looking at when we're doing this work about leveraging our three brains. And we really slowed down. We really slowed down to kind of think through and feel through all of these questions. So, all right, I'm going to take a quick look in the chat here. Are there any questions, Ashley, that I might be missing? I'm seeing some great comments here.
I didn't see any questions, just a lot of comments.
Okay, fabulous. Good. Okay, all right. So we're going to do a quick poll here. We're at the top of the hour. So we're going to do a quick poll. Tell me what has been the most useful to you today? And maybe you've seen it before, but what has been the most useful to you today? Was it the thoughts, emotions, action cycle that we talked about in the beginning, the feelings wheel, maybe putting the brakes on, which is where we take our emotional pulse and then take a 6-step breath in the middle, right? And then imagine that best possible outcome. Or maybe it was this last bit about using all 3 of our minds, our head, our heart, and our gut. And maybe it's something else completely different. And if you had something else that came to you today that was valuable, please throw that in the chat and share that with all of us. I'd just like to get a sense of what's been valuable for you. Great. All right. So today our value has been with putting the brakes on and using all 3 of our minds. So that's great. And some people are getting value out of the thoughts, emotions, action cycle, and the feelings wheel. Yeah, see with the reminders someone needed, Laura needed today. So putting the brakes on, taking a deep breath. Great. Well, good. I want to share just a little bit with you before we open up for questions, just about taking it further. I do offer and do work with people individually on emotional intelligence. I mentioned the EQI 2.0, which is an assessment you can take. There's an individual version where you rate yourself on, 15 different skills. You don't know what skills you're rating yourself on, but you answer questions that create a report to rate yourself on 15 different skills in emotional intelligence. There's a 360 version. So if you have direct reports, you have managers, you have internal customers, maybe colleagues, et cetera, you can do a 360 version of this assessment and get a really detailed report to kind of show you your strengths and your opportunities. And then I work with you one-on-one in a debrief to help you go deep on where the opportunities are and where the areas are that you really want to focus on growing your skills in EI. Remember that EI skills are growable. And what's so wonderful about them is if you start working on one, you'll see gains and increases in others. And I think that is so cool because that doesn't happen when you're lifting weights. It doesn't happen in other areas where you might be trying to get better. When you start lifting weights for your biceps, your quads don't start getting stronger. It just doesn't happen. So with EI skills, it does because there's so much interrelationship between the skills. Feel free to join me on LinkedIn, Jahnavi Brenner. I think I'm the only one. Got a lot of PPCC folks that have kind of come into my circle through these workshops, and it's been a lot of fun. And if anyone's interested in a 30-minute chat about emotional intelligence and how it could support them in relationships or anything in their life, I'd love to do probably, let's see, we've got 110 people. Let's do 4 complimentary consults. So feel free to shoot me an email if that's something you're interested in, and we can get some time on the calendar to talk about what exactly is challenging you and how I could support you. I'm going to share a little bit about this EQI assessment here. Again, this is the model of the 5 different areas and the 3 skills in each area. Get a 21-page report when you do the individual assessment and a 42-page report if you do the 360. It's really, really fabulous because it gives you, the 360 gives you agreed upon strengths, agreed upon development areas, and then blind spots for you. Strengths you had, you didn't know about it, and opportunities you have that you didn't know about. This has been really helpful for people to understand how they might be showing up differently with different groups of people. I had one person who leads a team who shows up a certain way with their colleagues and shows up a different way with their direct reports. And they were able to kind of see that in the 360 version and kind of think about that and maybe shift some of their behavior to help bring out some of those qualities that other stakeholders were interested in seeing. This is a screenshot of, that kind of the ratings. So you can see kind of on a scale, and they show you this relative scale for each different skill. And then here's some of the details you get for each skill, what the score means, what's the impact at work, and then some strategies kind of down lower on the page. So I mentioned that the EQI was developed, this assessment was developed in 1982, and it's been studied and revised multiple times since then. And in the debrief, I usually focus on 1 to 3 areas. You know, where do you really want to take specific action to leverage your EI skills or grow them so that your satisfaction goes up with your life and also your effectiveness as well. Here's a short testimonial from someone who actually works in HR who's been familiar with the assessment, but it was really the debrief for her that kind of brought to life how to use this and to grow herself in ways that she hadn't thought about before. And then finally, you know, just some key takeaways here. You know, our emotional intelligence skills are critical in decision making, and that we can interrupt what seems instinctual to help us make decisions better by reality testing and also controlling our impulses. And then finally, the EQI 2.0 assessment can support you in identifying your strengths and opportunities to improve your leadership presence as well as your effectiveness. So I'd love to take any questions that you might have, or kind of just have an open discussion with folks that are interested on EI. I'm going to take a quick look at the chat here. Yeah, I'm seeing some great comments about understanding what we can control, what we can influence, as well as what we can't do a darn thing about. And to me, that brings up acceptance. And often when we're dealing with other people, there's this thought about acceptance, right? We can't always change other people. We can try, but sometimes we just have to accept who they are, how they are, to help us move forward. And that's a really important concept. Diane had the comment about, you know, was she really hurt or was she choosing to be offended? Really powerful self-awareness. Yeah, thank you. Great. Okay, so any questions people want to discuss or ask questions? I'm open to it any way you want. Oh, reshow the last slide. Is that the key takeaways, Ash, that you want me to show, Linda?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thank you. I will do that. And I need to click to make them all come up. There you go.
And remember, we only have one more time with Jahnavi in February. So get your questions in now. Make sure you bring your questions to the February meeting. Reach out to her if you have any more questions or interests in her complimentary session or anything about wanting to connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Ashley. We've got a question about reality testing. Linda, do you want to come off? We can talk about it. Stop sharing too.
I think I really honed in when you were talking about the impulse control, and I'm not sure that I really caught how you do reality. Oh, the reality testing is the 3 brains. Is that it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So
I just
kind of
wasn't sure.
Yeah. Great question to clarify. You're slowing it down, right? You're slowing yourself down and really thinking through, feeling through the situation from a holistic point of view. To see it as it really is instead of see it from maybe an emotional lens. Usually what's happening is we see things from this emotional lens, or maybe it's a super logical lens all the time, and we're not checking in with our emotions or maybe our gut. You know, it's sometimes when we're spending a bunch of money, I don't know, I'm just kind of hypothesizing, I'm thinking about myself. When I spend a lot of money, sometimes I get super logical and I start writing a pros con list, and I don't think about what's going to make me happy and what's going to bring me joy, you know, and those things are important too. So
I put in the chat earlier, I sometimes have gotten myself in trouble with the impulse control when I am angry or, feeling betrayed or let down. That part of the feelings wheel really was right on for me. At the reaction of a boss or someone else, partner, whatever, and gone immediately to attack. And obviously that has not been good for relationships. And so that's something I'm aware of. And this is a great process, but it's catching myself, to the not reacting, not going on the attack.
Yeah. I sensed a question in there that I'll just answer
Sure.
There's a question, maybe there's that. How do I catch myself? How do I catch myself is what often people say, like, yeah, in theory, Jahnavi, this sounds fabulous. I can take a 6-step breath for sure, no problem. But how do I catch myself? And the way to catch yourself is to start practicing becoming aware of your emotions, and then also becoming aware of your physical sensation. Because what happens typically when we have a strong emotion is we do experience a physical sensation that goes with that. And for me, sometimes I get sweaty, sometimes I start shaking, sometimes I can feel my vision narrowing. And those are all physical things that are happening to me when I'm getting angry or frustrated or, agitated to a high degree. And when I start feeling or sensing my vision is narrowing, I then kind of pull back and I try to catch myself and take a deep breath. So the physical sensation is really important. And, yesterday with my client, I said, I want you to practice writing down how you're feeling. Like when you sit in a meeting with someone, like you're all going to skedaddle to another meeting later today. Take a half an hour in that meeting while you're listening to everything and watching, and just keep track of all the emotions you're experiencing. Print out that darn feelings wheel, anyone you like with a lot of color and words, and then just keep track of how I'm feeling. I'm feeling included because so-and-so said blah, blah, blah about me. I'm feeling excluded because no one said hi to me. I'm feeling, whatever it is. And these feelings come and go in us in milliseconds. Start keeping track of that. You will raise your emotional literacy, and you will start raising your ability to understand what's happening, and then be able to kind of catch it. So get aware of those physical sensations. Yeah, I'm here meeting bingo. Jim, I think you're going to have a beautiful audience here to sell that bingo card to. 100 people on the line here. Wonderful. Alexis has a question. Are you in a spot where you can come off mute here and we can talk about dealing with people who don't listen or don't hear you when you talk with them calmly? That sounds complex. Okay. Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you for talking with me. Yeah. So just in situations where it's a difficult situation and you've talked and talked and talked and been calm and, tried to share your side and tried to offer support, and it's gone nowhere. And then you just hit that moment where the emotions come out and the yelling comes out, and all of a sudden there's a reaction and a response, and it works. So it's effective when you tried a million times to do it the right way with the emotional intelligence and you got nowhere.
It's a super interesting observation. What do you think would be a good way to proceed there? What do you think's happening?
I don't know, because this is a pattern. I mean, I can give you 3 examples right off the bat of with different people. But when I speak calmly, when I try to rationalize and I just don't feel heard. And then all of a sudden it just changes when you say, look, this is not happening anymore. Like, this is it. It's either this or that. You lay the ultimatum even out there. And then finally you get a response. So
yeah, these are kind of complex situations. Like, is it a colleague? And I want to make sure you understand we got 90 people on there, or 80 people here, so be careful. about what you say to the colleague, a direct report? How should I be thinking about this?
This is family. So
Family,
mostly family, but also business relationships, not work related at all.
Wow.
But a business relationship, family, and then significant other.
Yeah. So sometimes, again, offering some advice here that may or may not be on track, and don't feel obligated to take it. But sometimes when we're being super calm and super logical, we're not expressing our emotion because we're kind of shoving it away. And we can say things like, I'm frustrated because blah, I'm frustrated because there's a pattern. And we can say that in a calm and rational way, but we can express our emotions as well. And often we aren't expressing both things. We're just expressing our thoughts and we're not expressing our emotions. And so people aren't kind of putting it together. And then when we explode, we're only expressing our emotion, and then they kind of get it and they're like, whoa, you got so emotional on me. How is that landing with you at all in terms of a possible way to approach it?
It's possible. It's hard to know how they're perceiving it. It makes me feel unheard and provoked when, I say it the right way and I tell them and I'm expressing my side of the situation, and, it takes the escalation to be heard. And it makes me feel devalued, and then it makes me feel like the bad person too, because then I'm the one who got upset. So
yeah. Well, what you just shared with me is really powerful. I encourage you to share that with the other person.
I did. It didn't work, but
oh gosh. Okay. Someone's got something in the chat. I knew this hive mind would be supportive. Alexis, book recommendation from Lisa.
Oh, thank you.
Time to Think by Nancy Klein, creating a thinking environment. Carla writes, a lot of people are just not listening. I don't respond with anger or accusations, no matter how I respond. I'm ostracized. Whew, that's tough. I think it's challenging now, right? Because everyone's dealing with their own stuff right now. Everyone's got a lot going on. And so it does make it a little harder to build connection, to connect in a way that you can really be heard. But I think, being heard starts with hearing the other person and maybe having some courage too to talk about a dynamic in the relationship that is affecting multiple issues in the relationship. And so, I'm just curious if maybe you could have that meta conversation where you're like putting yourself outside these different situations, but you're just talking about this dynamic in a relationship, and being more transparent there. Catherine's got some advice about how to kind of feel good about how you're showing up. The best you can do is communicate in a way in which you walk away feeling really good with how you approach something. The way the other person reacts and responds to it sits within that person. So it's about, knowing what you can control and accepting kind of where that other person is landing. April writes about setting boundaries, asking for validation. Yeah, setting a boundary and asking for what you need in the conversation. I need you to validate my experience and my feelings and my emotion. What is the change you need to see? So being explicit about what you need to see from the other person and be really clear about that. Alexis, does that help at all?
Yes, it does. Thank you all so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. This is such a wonderful hive mind. I love it. Great. Any other questions or people want to chat? This is great. We can wrap up here. We're at 20 after, so. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate you being all in for an hour and a half. That's a lot. And I hope that this was useful to you. And, I think we're all going to tattoo. A deep breath can really change things on our wrist or somewhere that we can see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jahnavi, and thank you everybody for being here today in the new year, start of the semester. I know things are probably feeling crazy for everybody, so thank you for being here.
Great. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.